12:03 on TSN 690. Welcome back to Game Points. I am your host, Matthew Ross. We're here till the top of the hour. TSN Matthew on Twitter.com. Still to come tonight here on the program. Our NFL Picks segment will actually be next. And we'll also do the Tweet 10 list with Stefano Micella. Know Your, tonight's edition, Oakland Raiders. And Jeff Erickson of RotoWire.com for fantasy football. All coming up tonight on Game Points. But right now, we go to our next guest who, last time he was on this program, said this.
Yeah, Loria is he's a malignant tumor in the body of baseball. I mean,
we welcome from Sports Illustrated's Major League Baseball coverage. You can follow him on Twitter.com/J_Jaffe, Jaffe, and be sure to check out his article this week on Vladimir Guerrero. We welcome to the program once again, Jay Jaffe. Hey, Jay, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well. Have you ever been introduced that way?
That's probably a first for me. I'll admit it, but it's good.
Now, what was the impetus behind writing a piece on Guerrero, who certainly is near and dear to a lot of Montrealers still?
Well, he officially announced his retirement this weekend. It was kind of a foregone conclusion because he didn't play in the major leagues last year, did a short stint with the Blue Jays in the minor leagues, and had been rumored to be signing with the Long Island Ducks of the Atlantic League this year in an effort to get another major league job, but apparently that never came about. So he finally made it official, and I just felt it was something that we ought to recognize because here's a guy who, maybe he's going to make it to the Hall of Fame, but if not, he's had a pretty great career and was a pretty singularly entertaining player, and I thought we should recognize that at SI.com.
Yeah, we were just talking about the Blue Jays situation from last year when, as you mentioned in your piece, the numbers that he had in the minors. And we were just talking about how when I chatted with Alex Anthopoulos last year, he mentioned that they wanted him to get 80 at-bats, and Vlad got a little impatient and asked for his release, which is really kind of sad because the Jays, of course, had many, many injuries, and it was no doubt, a call-up would have happened for him last year, and maybe that blackballed him a little bit this year, but in the end, he's done, and a lot of different memories obviously come to mind. For us here in Montreal, his 39 home run season marred by a bad home run lack thereof call by an official before the instant replay for home runs, where he could have been another one of those 40-40 guys. But when he went to Anaheim, was it sort of for the U.S. audience, particularly the West Coast? I know you're not based there. Was it a sort of a oh my goodness, who's this kind of guy, or did people really know how good he was when he was playing in Montreal?
Oh, I think people were aware of it. At least, like baseball fans who followed the game closely were aware of it. I mean, he'd already been on the All-Star team a few times, and he was probably the top free agent in that class that year. There's stories now about how the Dodgers had agreed to a deal with him, but couldn't close it because of the uncertainty of their ownership situation. They were in the process of being transferred from the News Corp Fox Group to Frank McCourt, which was not exactly a great move in the annals of Dodger history, but because they were in such disarray, he ended up signing with the Angels, and either way, he was moving to a bigger media market than he was in Montreal, and more people were going to get to see him play on a regular basis. But I think there was a pretty solid awareness. I remember, here in New York, there was a lot of hope that either the Yankees or the Mets would go after him, and Yankees ended up signing Gary Sheffield, who gave Vlad a run for his money in the MVP race in the American League that year. But I think both of those teams might have been better off had they shelled out for him rather than letting him go to Anaheim.
Chatting with Jay Jaffe from Sports Illustrated, talking about his article on Vladimir Guerrero that appeared this week on SI.com. And you mentioned that in the article, whether or not he makes the Hall of Fame, but you would vote for him.
Yeah, I think so. I'm in the Baseball Writers Association of America, but I'm still, I think, 7 years away from getting a Hall of Fame vote myself. So I'm a ways off, but I've spent a lot of time analyzing the Hall of Fame votes, and I've developed a statistical system called JAWS, which I use to compare every candidate to the average Hall of Famer at his position. And Vlad, Measures up reasonably well. What I do is I measure each player's career value and his peak value using wins above replacement, which encompasses offense and defense, and adjust for like scoring levels. So you can compare a guy from the 2000s when Vlad played to a guy from the 1940s when scoring was lower, and get a better gauge on just how important those homers really were, et cetera, et cetera. And at his peak, which I define as the player's best 7 years, Vlad was basically the equal of the average Hall of Famer at his position. A little short on the career mark because he basically faded from the scene in his mid-30s. But there are a lot of players in right field who are not nearly as qualified to be in the Hall of Fame as he is. And I think when you consider that, and not to mention the singular style with which he played, I could certainly justify a vote.
Jay, we were just talking last segment about Vladimir Guerrero's chances of going into the Hall of Fame. If he does get into Cooperstown, what hat would he wear? Would it be the Montreal Expos hat or the Anaheim Angels hat?
I think it would probably be the Expos hat. That decision is no longer up to the player; it's up to the Hall of Fame. I know that they're sensitive to, especially the Expos' plight, and would probably veer towards recognizing them because of their lack of current representation among the voting pool. When you look at what Vlad did in Anaheim, helping the Angels to 5 playoffs in 6 years, that's certainly something to consider. But he really made his star in Montreal, and I could understand wanting to recognize him for that. In a lot of people's consciousness, I think when they see Vlad in an Expos uniform and all of his glory there.
The one stat from your article that really struck me was the fact that he has the most hits of any Dominican-born player. I mean, to me, that's just astounding when you think about all of the stars that have come out of that country, whether they're pitchers or hitters, etc. That to me was just sort of an eye-opener.
Yeah, I thought that was a neat stat, and I actually wasn't even fully aware of that when I started researching the article. And then I was like, oh, that's right, that he passed Julio Franco, who came back from the dead several times to rack up his 2,500 and some odd hits, which Vlad passed. It's maybe a bit of a shame that Vlad didn't get to stick around to make a run at 3,000 hits. He certainly was the type of hitter who could have done that. I mean, you look at his career batting average, and I know batting average isn't everything, but a career batting average of 318, that's a guy who could put the bat on the ball and find the holes, and certainly would have been great to see him get there.
I think, unfortunately, what really hurt him down the stretch of his career wasn't even the Orioles season, which obviously in 2012, rather 2011, which wasn't so productive, but that World Series that he had, I guess it was in 2010 with the Rangers out in right field, where he bobbled a couple of balls. Do you think that had a lasting impression on the rest of the baseball world as to whether or not he could still play in the outfield?
Oh, I don't know if it had such a huge impression. I mean, I think he was bound to be mostly a DH no matter where he went, and that didn't help matters, but I think it had more to do with his general physical decline. I mean, this is a guy I think who still had issues from playing on the Olympic Stadium turf for so many years, had increasing knee issues, and wasn't good defensively, and all that cumulatively probably made him more of a risk than teams wanted to take on. And I'm sure there's pride probably came into play that he probably could have gotten a incentive-based deal that would have given him another shot, and that he probably could have made good on given his level of skill. But waiting out for a guaranteed deal and not finding one coming, I think he had his pride and probably wasn't willing to accept below a certain level.
Chatting with Jay Jaffe from Sports Illustrated, SI.com. Click on the MLB coverage, and the name of the article, by the way, a must-read for Montreal baseball fans, is Vladimir Guerrero announces his retirement and Hall of Fame should await. Jay, before we let you go, I wanted to get your thoughts on the 2 preseason games that were announced by Eventco, which is the local promotion company that's putting the event on in March 28th and 29th. of 2014. The Jays will play against the Mets. The Jays will be the home team. I wanted your thoughts on this experiment and what you think it means in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I think it's really cool, first of all, that the Blue Jays are taking a step to reintroduce Major League Baseball to Montreal, even if it is just, for a fleeting moment there. Hopefully this is something that can, catch the attention of local money that can maybe raise enough money to think about bringing a franchise there. I know there's been some isolated movements as far as a desire to bring a team there. Myself, I would love to see baseball back in Montreal. I think it, certainly would benefit the sport to have a larger presence in Canada as well as America. I think we're probably a long ways off from that, maybe a decade. But if this helps to lay the groundwork for the return of Major League Baseball to Montreal, I think it's a very good first step.
Well, Jay, we thank you so much for your time this evening. I know it's a bit of a late night, but appreciate it, and we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
All right, sure thing. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, there you go. That's Jay Jaffe, J_Jaffe on Twitter.com. If you want to follow Jay, of course, he writes for SI.com. It's Game Points here on TSN 690. All right, now we're going to talk NFL picks on the other side of the break, and now we need a caller to participate in the picks segment. You know your NFL. Have some fun with us. 514-790-1690 is the telephone number. Your name will go into a draw for a $150 gift certificate at
Vivere.
Restaurant Vivere down at Place Ville-Marie. We'll be back on the other side with some football.